Okay, hello everyone. It's the last day of the week, and while most people are thinking about weekend plans, we're here to talk about something way more interesting and exciting. Well, at least for us e-commerce nerds, retention. A warm welcome to our webinar on retention over acquisition, how D2C brands can scale without burning on ads. I'm Chetna Pinjani, your host for today, and I lead partnerships at Marmeto, where we build and transform commerce journeys for the best of brands. We all know customer acquisition is getting tougher and costlier, but what if the answer to sustainable growth isn't getting more customers, but keeping the ones you already have? Retention isn't just about email marketing, it's about seamlessly integrating technology, payments, and customer experience. And to help us break this down, we have two fantastic speakers joining us today. First, we have Anand Vardhan, Vice President at Marmeto. Anand brings a unique set of experience to e-commerce, having worked on both sides of the ecosystem, driving growth for brands and now enabling their success through Marmeto's digital transformation solutions. Joining him, we have Pravin Gadodia, Associate Director of Product Development at Cashfree Payments. Pravin will be sharing how payment failures, COD orders, and RTO affect retention and what brands can do about it. But before we jump in, let's quickly understand our audience. And it's time for a quick poll.
I think Praveen, for you also, I'm just kind of telling you the topic of the poll. You'll also be able to see it. I think the poll is about what is the biggest challenge with retention right now. The options that have been given are low repeat purchase rate, high, and customers prefer COD over prepaid. I think that is a challenge you guys are also trying to solve on making it better, and obviously the AOV piece, right? So these are the four options. I think we've started getting polls with, as usual, RTO being 55% of the answers that is there. India and RTO have a relationship that goes way, way, way back. So I think it very strongly the questions are going to come to you really soon. So
I'm sure, RTO has been like something which pains a lot to all the brands working in this domain. And with Indian ecosystem, I think from the brand's perspective, this has become a problem, a great problem to solve for.
it's the quintessential, I think, chicken and egg, right? So you have to offer trials to get in the consumer. The more trials you offer, the easier it is to return. That comes back to the PNL.
And also how the entire ecosystem is growing, the new D2C brands coming in and trying out things as well, right? Like so in fact, what we've observed is also like the trust that from the end customer perspective that they have on the brand kind of brings in that perspective of the returns and the experimental view from the end customer standpoint. And hence it kind of becomes quintessential as well for it. The brand as well to offer. And with COD, of course, this comes in as a byproduct of a problem. And you always have to offer COD in India to do that.
Perfect. So we'll be sharing the results for the polls and the key takeaways from today's discussions after the webinar, so stay tuned for that. Now let's begin our discussion for today. Let's begin with a question that sets the tone for everything we'll cover today. So we know that many D2C brands still prioritize acquisition over retention. Why do you think retention deserves more attention? So the question is for both of you, and let's hear it from you first, Anand.
Well, I think India treats, and not only India, a lot of brands in India, right, treat consumers as consumers only, right? What I feel is the general trend has changed from huge macro influencers who've like 10 million audiences, 12 million audiences, to even smaller audiences, smaller influencers, right? And I'm very sure the trend is going towards each customer now becoming an affiliate or, helping spread the word. I'll give you an example. One of my favorite brands is Blue Orange, right? And it's a huge t-shirt company, Indian luxury brand, a lot of them. I had not heard about it, but I saw it on a comedy show, which is now in controversy. But I saw that. I went to a few friends of mine who were wearing it, understood it. And now whenever I wear it and people ask me about it, I think I have this huge story about it, about why I'm wearing it, why I'm paying a premium for it. So even if I'm not a macro influencer, I'm hardly present across any social media channel, but what I feel is individual people will get you a lot of business, right? And if you extrapolate this to even categories which are even niche, for example, health, right? So it has the network effect, right? So if I'm going to the gym and you ask me where are you going, you will automatically feel that if Anand is going to the gym, I also want to go, right? So I think India as a geography has to treat its customers as also influencers, as micro as it might be, right? And I think that will also help generate a lot of traction, be it with health foods that are coming in. You see a new food on the table with a colleague that's there and you want to try it, right? The better the product that's there, the better you've sold your product to somebody. It kind of brings into the loyalty framework through the idea network that we have, right? So awareness, intent, desire, action, every MBA school teaches you, and then it comes back to a loyalty funnel. I think the more you influence a person when they are buying it, the more there are chances of natural education that happens in the society, right? I think that is one key point. I'm sure a lot of points are there, but I feel that Indian brands have to treat every customer as a surrogate affiliate or a small influencer, and then kind of build from there. That is my core point today. I think that is something that people should drive, and I'll let Pravin also top up on what I've said and maybe put his views also.
That's perfectly good. And look, even when we are observing how the Indian brands are operating, right? Uh, while everyone is very much gung-ho about acquiring new customers, then it takes a huge amount to like get a customer and get them like to a successful transacting customer. But once that experience is kind of smooth, right, at the time of the acquisition, it drives a lot and speaks a lot about the retention numbers as well, right? Like so in fact, like your acquisition experience at the time of the first time user coming to the brand and transacting with you, if that experience is kind of being taken care of in a very well manner, I think it reaps a lot of benefits down the funnel and the retention part of things. And to add, like from the brand's perspective, when they think about the channels of how and where to acquire more merchants from for the users, I think affiliate, like you said, and influencers has been the channel that brands have been extensively using. And to your point that you rightly brought it up, like your users or your customers kind of become the brand ambassador of your brand. That word of mouth is much more powerful than any other channel that you can spend money on and get money, like get them to transact with you.
Absolutely. Those are some great insights. I can personally attest to being influenced by Anand, wearing blue orange t-shirts all the time. So before we dive deep into what we can do and what are the strategies and what is the best way of acquisition and retention and what is the best way to execute these strategies, to another goal and understand from all of you what's stopping you from starting your retention journey.
Pravin, what do you predict will be the biggest among the four options that are there? I'll just read out the options for you. So one is lack of the right tech tools, limited budget, not sure where to start. I'm not very sure if somebody is going to mark the fourth option, which is I already have a strong retention story.
I think then they would not be here on the audience as well. Yeah, I think probably like when to start getting that knack of understanding, right? Like how to balance between acquisition and retention, and in this entire race of getting more revenue, getting more customers. I think there are things when people kind of over-index on getting new customers and being very much focused there. But that sweet spot of when do you start on spending on retention, as always, debate on the brand. So I would probably go for that.
You're right. What about you? I have the polls open in front of me, so it's not going to be a predictive answer. But I think the major point that comes in is what you've also mentioned, right? So it is not sure where to start, and if you extrapolate it, it's also about why to start, when to start, how to start, where to start, right? I think there's a lot of buzzword about retention, but there are very few people, very few brands in the country who drive retention to the core, right? Very few brands have different retention teams who like super skilled in retention, customer feedback. I remember when I was working with Saffola before this and at Marico, so trials were being conducted at mass. I think a lot of CPG companies, FMCGs drive a lot of trial before, even building a product. I think there was a crowdsourced flavor that Baskin and Robbins came up with. So they already know that this is the audience that we are going to cater to because I'm bringing out a product that these guys want, right? So I think from my perspective, it's a story, right? And you can deep dive on different retention strategies, but you have to start, right? You have to treat your consumer with respect and then understand that every consumer is important because they are people who are speaking up, and there are a lot of people who might not speak and just leave. So you should be grateful that people are coming back and giving you feedback and then kind of building on top of it. And I've seen a lot of D2C brands do it. A lot of them don't. Burn and earn is not going to work in the long term scheme of things, right? So yeah,
I think, yeah. So I think we have the perfect audience for this webinar. Now that we know that the audience is here to learn where to start their retention journey, let's dive deep into why retention is so hard to implement well. So Anand, from a tech perspective, what are the biggest hurdles you see D2C brands struggling with?
See, I think tech is very 0 to 1, right? So you build something, it will give you a success, failure, metrics around it, right? I think metrics around retention are very broad today, right? So even if you see a repeat consumer, the maximum you can understand why they are repeating is maybe retargeting. So you'll understand ki I've sent a WhatsApp message, I've asked about certain things, and that's why they've come back. Nobody actually deep dives or calls the consumer to understand what is the reason for your next purchase, right? And when you speak to the consumer, you will understand that your retention strategy had nothing to do with that guy ordering again, right? There might be a chance that the person was trying to shift from your brand and there was no product that they could find at that particular moment of time and hence chose you. So the entire attribution now shifts from my retention game is not strong. It was out of necessity that the consumer built it. I think when we fail at something, when a D2C brand is not getting orders, then the hype is real around, why the orders are not coming. But when the orders come in for an M2 or an M3 level, nobody deep dives into why the order is coming. Everybody tries to take attribution and say, I sent the WhatsApp message at the right time. I created a billboard at the right time. I did BTL, ETL, through the line, a lot of things around it. But I think the biggest hurdle is actually asking the consumer why you bought it for the second time. And funnily enough, there are very strange answers to this. And I've done a lot of research with a lot of D2C brands. And one of the reasons that I got one time was I just couldn't go to the retail market and my details were logged in on the phone on this brand and hence I ordered, right? So now you can't attribute this to any of the channels that you're trying to create. So I think the biggest hurdle that you'll find, and it's a very practical thing, is when there's success, you never ask the reason for retention happening. I think the fallback is when you're failing in retention is when you go back and then you kind of talk to the consumer, right? I think the consumer is going to give you amazing insights if you ask, why did you repeat? Why do you think this happened? And I'll give you one example and then I'll open the floor for Pravin also. So there's a huge cutlery brand who's been doing business in India for like a lot of years, long before me and Pravin were even born, I guess. So there was this consumer who came in and who was buying 100 products a month, right? And everybody was very happy that he's buying 100 products a month, and suddenly one day it stopped, right? And people went mad about why is this consumer not buying these products again? And I actually took a call with the consumer and I spoke to him and I asked him, what is this trend of you ordering 100 bottles a month? Like, what is the need? And then he said, I run a startup which has 900 people. Every Diwali, I have to give them gifts. The only way to personalize it, because you've kept the cap in D2C to 100 bottles, is to order 100 a month, then send it for customization, and then kind of give it to the consumer. So my colleagues and the people who are in my company. If I had not spoken to that, right, then the brand would have increased spends on retention, right? That's not working for them. But now what we built and what we understood is I just have to solve the problem of personalization. If I can build that, then my 100 bottles are not going anywhere. And that is what we did, right? I'm not going to name the brand, it's a pretty famous brand. But I feel these insights are required today, right? There's a lot of information through AI and GPT and a lot of stuff. But I think this insight comes only when you talk to the consumer, right? Ki, kyun aap 100 bottle? Why are you putting in 100 bottles a month? Very irregular behavior. Why do you stop for 2 months? Had I not spoken to that guy, I think the brand would have lost a lot of revenue. Today, personalization for that brand is about 12.5% of their online revenues, right? Which is huge. And they do upwards of 120 crores a year, right? Through their D2C channel. So I think this is my clear uptake that you should keep speaking to the consumers, even though they are ordering. You will find out insights about it. Very little brands do it. Fortunately, they kind of do whatever Chetna you also written here. So this is the handbook for retention. But I think, yeah, Pravin, you can top it up.
That's very rightly pointed out, right? Like, so we started off from the current challenge of understanding, like, and that realization. That is the most biggest point of when to start on retention as a problem, right? Like, and if you have made that mind up as a brand, right? Like, this is the something which you need to solve for, then you hop on to like how to solve for it as a next step, is where that critical part of what you just mentioned of understanding, and it's very contextual, right? Like the example that you take about the brand of the crockery, like their repeat purchase or the repeat cycle behavior, even from the consumer standpoint, might be very different, which was like a annual corporate gifting use case versus like in a, let's say, FMCG or a food brand or something else, it could be a very frequent purchase. So you understanding the knack of which business do you belong to, what is the need from the customer standpoint, how frequent it is, to benchmark and like define like what should be your standard retention rate when compared to the other brands operating in the same domain, gives you that like good understanding of that where you stand, and then understanding like why would they in fact even order, and then like you mentioned, and the points that are captured here are these the tools of achieving that goal, right? But defining that goal, understanding the pattern and what you want to achieve would become a very critical point. And then once you have that realization, then there are a lot of avenues and solutions available out in the market with a lot of tech solution providers available with plug and play solutions as well, like how things have advanced today with recommendations and personalizations coming in. There's a lot more room even for the smaller brands to achieve what probably the likes of Flipkart and the ones would have done after long period of influence.
Yeah. I'll just walk through maybe these 5 points that are there on the slides, right? And I'll take a very different approach on how people have kind of used it differently, right? So I know brands in India who are selling baby clothes, right? Baby wear, children clothes, and their recommendations are tweaked to temperatures that are there around the IP location of your laptop, right? So when you take it as a blanket statement where AI-powered recommendations are the next go-to, I think you have to understand that AI-powered recommendations will come in as a tool, right? How you use that to your context, very different game. If you see the minimalist store also that's there, one of the most famous D2C brands, considering the acquisition and all the hype around it, right? I think they will bundle their products, what we've said at point number 3, and they will try to upsell, but it will only happen after they've spent some time understanding your skin type and things like that, right? Which is through the quiz. Without the quiz or the personalized suggestions that's there for the consumer, it is just somebody trying to sell a lot, right? So the why behind it is understanding your skin and then tailoring solutions to it, which will be a part of retention. But without the quiz, it is plain vanilla upselling, which any retail salesman will do as soon as you enter the kirana shop in India. It's been a trend. You don't like that, right? I'll again give you a very contextual example. So I was in Bistro and I entered a store, and there is this huge trend in e-commerce where they have pop-ups and discounts that come in within 3 seconds of you joining in or 2 seconds of you joining in. And I went to the market and I in Bistro and I entered a store, which was a luxury store, right? And the lady came up and said, "So 20% for you." And I looked at myself and I was very offended. I'm like, do I look like somebody who enters a luxury store and asks for a discount, right? Is there something wrong with what I'm wearing? Now, when you relate that to the entire e-commerce journey that's there, imagine you going to buy a premium product and the first thing that you see is here's 10%. So you actually feel offended rather than going into the purchase journey, right? Very counterproductive to how things are working. Similarly, for subscriptions, if you don't offer them gratification, that because you've taken 1/4 of subscription, I'm giving you a small discount, right? Changing the narrative to if you take subscriptions, I will give you 10%, to because you've been loyal, I'm giving you 10%, has a very different contextual meaning in the mind of the consumer also, especially in India. Like you'd want to be called as efficient, thrifty, frugal, but not being called cheap, right? So I think that piece is something that even though these tools are there, you would want to set the context before you go into.
Absolutely. I think I totally agree with what Anand said about asking the right questions, and that brings me to my next question to you, Praveen. Let's shift to a very real operational layer, payments. Failed transactions and COD orders can quietly derail retention. So, Praveen, from your experience, what steps can brands take to minimize failed payments and make prepaid the default preference?
Yeah. I think payments at this point has fairly like the digital payments, like when you go time before UPI, and it was an era in itself. And post UPI coming in, I think things have changed a lot. The digital penetration that you see across the end customers, and also the acceptance of digital payments among the brands has gone upside. And it's not just about now the acceptance, but it's also about the deep understanding of the conversions, the success rates, the need of having different payment modes options on the checkout, right? And also the need of having backups, probably, right? Given the solutions that are available in the market now, I think brands are not kind of okay to lose a customer revenue at the last stage of the entire journey, right? It takes so much effort and money to bring a customer uh, to that stage of like making the payment. And if someone kind of drops off there, it becomes a huge loss and pain point. And that's the last thing that the brand would kind of want to do that, right? So when, like, while working with the brands, what we've observed is available, like even if it's about net banking, a long tail net banking as a payment mode, right? Like Bank of Baroda ka net banking option, right? But even a drop off because of that small long tail bank also option not being available is a pain that that a brand would want to avoid. So availability of the payment modes has been problem. We also did a survey. In fact, we are talking to the e-commerce shoppers, right? And I think did a survey with 1,000 shoppers, and they kind of said that about 15 to 18% of them responded that they kind of drop off at the last stage because lack of availability of the payment mode. And when I say lack of availability, it could be as sparse as like international payment mode, like is also one of the things that has come in recently. Like a lot of brands are now targeting the segments or the customers who might potentially hold international cards or payments option, right? And there are attempts, like in fact, brands are kind of unaware of that they are catering to the such customer persona who might hold a card of like an international card, which is not from India, and they end up losing that revenue, right? So in fact, as a payment provider, we take that onus of educating and enabling and providing those payment options to the brands so that there is a minimal drop off that happens on the payment page, right? So and goes without saying, right? COD in India is a need, right? Of course, as a brand, when you're running a business, you would want to avoid COD as much as possible due to the cost implications. It hits the working capital because the cash being collected when it comes back to you. There are a lot of issues around it. But at the same point in time, understanding the persona, I think COD becomes a need for you to enable the conversion. And that's when the entire piece of how the smart COD comes in, right? Like understanding the customer well, and accordingly kind of then using COD for the right audience with the right flavor matters a lot, and then effectively helps with the conversion as well as helps you with preventing the frauds and preventing the losses that can that a brand can incur with COD as a payment mode, right? And you took an example of subscription, Anand, right? Like so, in fact, what we've seen, like we were working with a brand in a pet care solution, and there is a frequency, like speaking about retention and repeat purchase behavior, and subscription as a payment mode being available kind of helps, and the ease of like going through that, setting up the subscription or the match, and how easy you can make it for the first time, and kind of then you kind of bring them back at a defined frequency, and which matters a lot for the high repeat purchase behavior brands and like the line of businesses. So like these small nuances is what the depth of those nuances matters a lot at the payment stage, which is in fact, like you mentioned, it is the last stage of the entire funnel, but kind of very important because people have very low like acceptance or tolerance about losing your business at that stage. So yes, Anand, if you have to add on to that.
I think there is a huge design model which says the more options you give the consumer, choice making becomes difficult. You'll see restaurants claiming that I do 5 products, do it well, and hence sales are through the roof. I think the stark difference to it would be checkouts, right? I think the more options you give the consumer, because as a consumer, you might be linked to a federal bank discount, which is only for you on your credit card because you bought it in March, right? It might be a very niche use case, but it might make decision making different when the AOV is higher, right?
Yeah.
If the brand does not have that, right, then your entire effort of targeting, spending on ads on a Google feed, driving the person to your store, making it super fast and high converting and upselling will all go for a toss if the federal bank or the ICICI bank option is not there, right? Even if you go today to Swiggy and you kind of go on the offer section, you will see 2,000 options. It makes choice easier for you, right? I think that's how it is. We're also trying to make payment search something on checkout. It's currently impossible because as it becomes to 200, 300, 500 offers, instead of scrolling, it'll be much easier if you can just type ICICI Bank or filter and things like that, right? I'm not saying it's something that should be built, can be built, will be built, but I think it's very easy on the eye when it happens, right? So I'll give an example which helps. So we're working with a brand which does US and India separate stores. But the niche that we are trying to explore with them when it comes to payment is what happens when a person is traveling from US to India, trying to order on the Indian store, but using the US credit card, right?
Yeah.
or you have an Indian credit card and you've gone to the US and you're ordering for India from US through an Indian credit card, right?
Yeah.
And because the higher the AOV, the more important the consumer, right? And the AOVs here are about 2 lakhs, 3 lakhs, the sarees that are being sold, right? So you have to get into that niche, right? There is no way of having a high conversion rate or a high AOV if you let consumers drop because you're trying to analyze which solution will help you get reach, impact, and a lot of things in the RISE framework, right? So unless every consumer is important in the checkout, it is very difficult to build any kind of retention strategy, right? Everything goes for a toss. If I want to pay through cash and you are giving me a QR code, if I want to pay through a Bhim UPI and you're giving me a Google Pay UPI and things like that, right? So I think checkout is a very experimental stage. Take it as the end of the journey at the supermarket also, where you just want to go to your car as soon as possible, right? You have your trolley, you just want everybody to bill it really fast, you really want to go home. If you can kind of make the experience on the checkout as smooth as maybe a Starbucks checkout or a Spencer's checkout when you're buying like tons of stuff, I think that's a game changer, right? Nobody's forcing you to buy, nobody's asking you that why did you take these 15 things and things like that. I think that replication from retail, because it is a retail dominated geography, right? So,
Yeah, and just to add, like that was exactly what has happened, right? Earlier payment gateway, as a provider, the job was merely to help with facilitating the digital transaction, which is not the case anymore, right? Like it's essentially you are controlling the entire checkout experience, and well, we also kind of gone to a level of like bringing the entire cart view and also allowing them to edit the card at the checkout itself, so that the customer doesn't have to go back and store and like kind of figure out like, hey, what did I order, what is the amount, etc. Like, and the customizations as well, be it about like even when you talk about offers, like fortunately, I think there's a lot this is a lot more driven through the offer-led journey. Like that's an Indian mind ecosystem that we have today, and with the complexity of the kind of offers, how to use the offers, for what objective do you need to use the offers and coupons for, and application of it during the checkout, right? How do you make it smart? How do you make it more effective with the ROI being the most for the brand and for the customer? I think all those nuances have come into the play and as a responsibility for owning the checkout, and plays a huge role in overall behavior of repeat purchase as well, right? Like understanding, if I know that, hey, Anand has kind of transacted before with, let's say, credit card and this credit card, like, so showing that preferred upfront, learning about it's not just about Anand's preferences, but it's also about the ability for me to successfully finish the transaction by understanding the rails of Visa network, the card network, and like, so bringing in that intelligence all together to render the checkout to like have the best experience possible for the buyer is what has it come to from the payments perspective.
Absolutely agree with the both of you. We understand that a smooth checkout is very important, but it's also equally important to use behavioral nudges to drive prepaid. And that, Anand, brings me to our next question. How can tech play a role in using behavioral nudges to drive higher AOV and increasing LTV?
yeah, I think everybody, it's maths, right? So you get a certain number of consumers by sending some amount of messages. You multiply it with your conversion rate, 3%, 2%, whatever, into the average order value or the selling price that you have, into then again number of people who are coming in. That's the maths about D2C currently, right? And everybody tries to follow it. What I feel is to increase AOV, one, you have to upsell at the right place. I think we upsell wrongly throughout the store. Post-purchase upsell, post-checkout. So from a tech lens, right, the thank you page is the only page on any D2C store on Shopify, Magento, any other platform that's there, preferably Shopify. So any thank you page that's there is the only way you can get instant confirmation that payment has gone through, right? And if you upsell over there, be it affiliate, be it loyalty, be it selling trinkets that's there, the consumer is more suitable to buy it over there because it's a sense of instant gratification that you bought X and immediately I'm giving you Y, rather than telling him that or her that this has been bought and then 10 days later I'm giving you another discount, right? This is one piece of it. I think the thank you page of any e-commerce platform is one of the most underutilized pages in the entire e-commerce journey that's there, right? I have seen a lot of brands, especially demi-fine jewelry, trying to utilize the thank you page to upsell you to buy a set, right? And you can then give the parts of the set as a COD order as well, right? This is one part, and I think, and this is where tech comes in, right? So there's a lot of data that you can analyze from the login ID. You can kind of see that this person is maybe 30 years old in New Delhi, and you can sell stuff, predict what they are going to buy, and then easily upsell things that are linked. So if you sell a necklace to a lady who's already bought a necklace, it's not going to work, right? Because the purpose is solved. But if you understand that with the necklace, there's an 82% chance that a earring is being sold, and then you kind of build the stack so that on the thank you page, you upsell the earrings and then enable it for checkout or gift it to a friend, I think that kills the entire thing, right? So I remember for one jewelry brand long back, we had built a nudge system, right, on Valentine's. So instead of a lady buying it herself or men offering the most useless things on Valentine's or women offering the most useless things for that particular person, you can actually nudge the other person that this is what you want to buy, right? Now, while this concept is amazing, the entire execution happens to tech, right? So whatever strategy you're building, execution will always happen to a solid tech. How fast can it be? How smooth is it? How well is the code written so it does not add layers to your LCP, FCP, time to load, and things like that, right? So whatever strategy you're doing or making is obviously up to brand marketing teams and a lot of retention teams that are there. But execution here, right? And in the words of my of a lot of people that we've heard, that execution is strategy for breakfast, right? So unless your tech is good, strategy is just like a story that you're trying to build, right? It will come in with divisive screens, broken codes, and whatever you're thinking will not get executed. So one part that I feel where tech comes in is the better the tech, the higher the chances of success for any strategy, especially in retention, like the example I told you, right? And the second part is I have seen brands extend loyalty to your 9th purchase, to your 12th purchase. So buy one at 40, buy two at 30, BOGO, and etc., clubbed with affiliate after 3 months, loyalty after 6 months, certain amount of discount on the 9th purchase, 11th purchase, birthday combined. So that is where tech comes in. Imagine how difficult it is to manually track who's on the 9th purchase, who's on the 11th purchase, and then offer something, right? So I think that is pretty smoothened out if you have a good tech platform, right? So just summarizing, I think easy execution by superb tech. And the second part is build the entire strategy long-term, automate it as soon as possible so the efficiency is high. So I think these points are where tech comes in. Whatever strategy you're doing, efficiency and speed matters. So.
These are some great points, Anand. Coming back to you, Pravin, let's say a brand has a good loyalty program, good subscriptions, everything in order. But even if a brand needs all that, there's one still major hurdle that undercuts retention, and that's return to origin. So, Pravin, what payment and delivery solutions can help reduce RTO?
So, I think from a payments perspective, right, like what we've observed, and I think everyone would be aware of, is essentially if someone is paying through a prepaid instrument, the chances of RTO are relatively much lesser when compared to someone actually making a payment via cash on delivery as a payment option, right? So I think extending that thought and that uh, like the need of making a user to like commit to the purchase upfront at the time of the checking out is what matters and kind of is very crucial in defining and reducing the return to origin as a problem, right? So I think how as a payment player as well and as a brand, when the customer is there on the checkout to make the payment and is like has already made the mind to buy the product, right? Like but it's essentially at the last leg, you don't want to lose them, and but at the same point in time you don't want to give them COD as well because there is a chances of high RTO. So there are different strategies that brands can potentially use to do that, but it's also understanding that balance between how aggressive you are to prevent an RTO versus how are you managing your conversions, because both of them are kind of counter to each other. Like if you go aggressive on preventing RTO, it might lead to drop off in the conversion as well at some point in time, because you might end up not giving a COD as a payment mode option at all on your checkout, right? So and hence I think what has happened and how system has evolved as well is that if someone is choosing COD as a payment mode, you kind of nudge them to do a prepaid by incentivizing them a bit probably, which that burn of incentivization is also kind of lower than the cost of RTO that can potentially occur if the COD happens, right? So it's not just about nudging at the time of during the checkout. Of course, when someone has clicked on COD, there's simple like pop-up that can come in. Hey, you still want to pay with COD? Like there is a 5% off if you use another payment mode, or you potentially like charge something additionally for COD, which kind of uh, gives them a nudge about like, hey, why should I pay extra? I might as well pay right now if I have made up my mind. So the different strategies depending on how the brand wants to kind of like handle and like probably the primary objective that they have, and how do they kind of use this technology of uh, reducing the RTO. And interestingly, like I said, it's about commitment, getting the commitment. And so even for the higher AOV brands that we have seen, right, like the risk of RTO like usually is also like they are very concerned about that, and hence also the partial COD as a payment option has kind of come in, wherein you kind of nudge the customer to make and commit partially by making a half payment, or like you can configure it whatever amount you want to make them pay, and still like the rest of the amount can be paid at the time of the delivery, right? So that particular option of providing the partial COD also helps a lot in the overall objective of reducing the return chances, right? And we and you have to be smart about whom do you expose solution, uh, expose partial COD to, expose COD as a payment option to, right? So it has gone to the extent that where you can use the technology to understand the behavior of the user who's coming in through different factors. It could be the past purchase behavior, it could be the credit behavior, it could be the items in the cart. So there are different parameters, right? There are about more than 20 plus parameters basis which this risk models are kind of built to identify the risk score for a given user, and accordingly your checkout can behave uh, essentially by understanding the user upfront, right? And that kind of makes a lot of difference because it is personalized to the core, and you preempt that there is a high chance of RTO, and you kind of then make your offer more aggressive for prepaid nudge, or you kind of even do away with COD as a payment option at all to prevent that. And it kind of translates to the overall fraud prevention as well, right? And it's not just we as a payment gateway kind of are contributing to this, but overall ecosystem, be it even when a transaction is being sent to the networks for in a prepaid solution to let's say Visa, they have their own risk engines models to detect and predict the fraud on the card and as an instrument that is being used for making the purchase, right? So there are multiple technological solutions that kind of exist for a brand to use them to their best utilization for the objective and kind of address the RTO as a problem. And we have seen we have worked with several brands on this, and the kind of impact this intelligence and these kind of solutions, how do you use them, can bring in your cost by less than, like we have seen 100% improvement, right? If your RTO was at 25%, 30%, we have seen brands being able to reduce that to 10% as well, which is a huge save from the cost perspective and also the experience perspective from the customer standpoint.
I think, thank you so much, firstly. And I think that's such an important call out that when customers come in financially, they're more likely to complete the purchase and lower the RTO with stronger the retention strategies. So let's zoom out again. We've covered strategy, we've covered operation, but let's talk about outcomes. So the question is for either of you. Would either of you like to share an example of a brand that truly nailed their retention strategy and what set their approach apart?
You want to go first?
So there was I would take the example of one of the brands clinically who has been into on the healthcare space, right? So we have been working with them for a long time, and when they came to us, I think overall RTO was RTO COD to prepaid ratio of payments is kind of very much correlated, right? How much is your overall, if you're doing 100 transactions, how much is the prepaid, how much is the COD, how much is the RTO? All these three metrics are kind of correlated, and with a simple solutions around preventing RTO, in fact reduces your RTO, reduces your COD, and increases your prepaid share at the same point in time. So that overall planning and strategizing and working with them, understanding their behavior, the user behavior, and configuring the right set of rules to cater to their user behavior matters a lot in terms of how effectively use these tools, right? As a tech solution providers, we build a stack to cater to multiple brands, multiple use cases and line of businesses. But how deep you know your business and effectively using those technology and configurations to help the cause that you have matters a lot. And that's what we did with clinically, and we were able to reduce the COD share. It was roughly trending around 40% or so, and we had been able to brought down that to by 10% effectively, and also reducing the RTO from about 18%, and it had come down to 10-12%, right? So these are the effective strategies how brands can use collectively. By understanding how to use tech kind of becomes more much more important, because solutions are available, right? The tech side of things have evolved a lot. There are a lot of plug and play solutions that are there in the market, but how to use them effectively matters a lot. And it was a great experience and kind of was appreciated about how this had overall helped in reducing the COD as a problem for them.
So just topping up on what Pravin said, right? I think I'll take a little more macro approach to it. I think mattress companies in India have kind of figured out how to retain without pushing to sell, right? I think most of the mattresses companies in India have kind of brought in tech to analyze whether your sleep is happening properly or not. Because rather than asking people if my mattress is good, they're asking whether the mattress is solving the problem, right? So a lot of them have come up with sleep monitors, patterns, checking whether they're sleeping or not. Uh, so they're actually trying to figure for the next 1 year, 12 months, 18 months, whatever it is, right? That the reason why the consumer kind of chose our product, uh, is it actually solving the purpose, right? And if you keep checking it for consumers, not just checking whether my mattress is good or not, or my product is good or not, but if you keep checking whether it is still solving the problem. And I think that is a very good way of approaching, right? Even if it comes to heavy consumer electricals, right? Be it a fridge or a TV or XYZ or whatever it is, right? I think a lot of brands today keep checking whether it's working or not, right? They keep checking whether the fix happened properly, whether it was installed properly, is there leakage, if a fridge is there, how far is it from the wall, is it not working, and things like that, right? I think if any brand, be it apparel, be it cosmetics, keeps checking whether the problem that their product was purchased for is being solved or not, without asking the consumer, "Do you like my product?" Right? I think that goes a long way in how things can change, right? As a company or a mattress company, it's very easy for me to ask, "Yeah, is it working for you or not? Right? Is it the best mattress in the world or not for you?" And if you ask these questions, the customer cannot tell you on the face that no, it's not. It's hardly half of what I paid for, right? The value is not being provided. But if I can monitor sleep and I can see that the person is sleeping well, or resting well, uh, the signals are there that he's comfortable, he or she, they are comfortable on that particular mattress, then retention is done, right? You're solving the problem. Why will a consumer give back your product? Right? So I think the narrative has to change for a lot of brands in India, uh, be it any segment, right? Shoes, are they wearing out? Uh, Earphones, are they working? Cosmetics, is your hair still standing straight if I've sold you something for your hair? Are your pimples not reappearing after using mine? Because uh, if it does not reappear, then there's a chance that it's not. If it's appearing again, then there's a chance that the product's not working and it's a gimmick, right? So today the consumer is not going to realize it, but in 3 months they will, right? And a lot of these brands have gone out of the picture, even though their first selling was based on efficiency, right? Minimalists cracked the code when it came to how efficient their solution was, right? Rather than saying how beautiful my product was or selling an aspiration that was there, right? So I think we, as brand owners or agency owners or product owners, have to keep checking with consumers or customers that whether the problem is still being solved, because the problem will always exist. Whether it's being solved by my product, my brand, my agency or not, is something that you have to keep checking. And I think mattress companies have done that really well, and the new age companies are really, really fighting for share from the age old ones that we know using tech, because I feel the momentum that they could build was very strong. They built moat around traditional companies with tech, AI, sensing patterns, and all of that. So I think that is something that is very, very appealing, and that is where D2C should go, because it's all about ensuring that your consumer is happy. Right? So I think this is one example that I feel these companies have done really well, and hence they've taken it by a storm right today. So that's my take on it. Yeah.
Think love those insights, and I think what that helps us understand that it's not just about running one email campaign, and it's about actually building what your consumer needs. So before we jump into the Q&A round, let's do one another poll. And that is, what retention strategy will you focus on after this webinar?
Pravin would want it to be number one, which is improving checkout and payment efficiency. I would always want people to go back to improving site performance. The first answer is enhancing post-purchase engagement, which is fair, I think. Catering to your consumers, who are your consumers, have to be a priority. Everything else comes second, right?
And even post-purchase behavior, like how you manage the returns and the refunds as well, kind of leaves a lot of impact and impression on the end customer. Like even if it is has RTO for that matter, or like there is a return, but still, like how do you treat that customer and end customer, and the experience around the returns and the refunds matters a lot. Like we have seen brands ready to pay extra for instant refunds as a need to have an instant gratification for the end customer, to have that comfort and trust that, hey, I've got my money back instantly.
So that brings us to the end of our panel, but the conversation doesn't stop. We're opening the floor now. Drop your questions in the chat and let's keep the conversation going. The first question was, what was the name of the t-shirt brand? I think Anand, you were actually influencing people on the webinar itself.
Yeah, we should take a screenshot of this and send it to the brand also. That this is happening. But yeah, dude, I think a lot of these brands, right, Indian luxury brands have come up. I think you see it on a lot of podcasts. You see brands like Almost Gods coming up, Orange coming up, and they've created their own niches, right? I think t-shirts as a category, heavy duty, has now been made a category. I think Indian luxury is now competing with a lot of brands in this country. A lot of global brands are feeling the heat. So I think they're doing a very good job.
And I was actually amazed to understand like how they operate as well, in terms of the drops coming in phases, and like the craze around it. Like and for the brands like who have just started like few years ago and reaching to the state of operations, it's highly commendable.
Crazy.
We have another question. So what are the two things that brands that have just started their D2C journey do to improve retention?
I think we've spoken a lot about this. I think one thing would be keep updating your consumer about where their product is. I think the more you talk to the consumer post-purchase, the lesser the chances of a drop that's happening. That is one piece of it. Post-purchase, keep talking to the consumer, keep asking, do you still need it? Is it fine? So that is one part. And the second part is just give the consumer as many options bottom of the funnel in your store, right? I think give them the luxury to split, pay in 3, pay in 5, pay some ahead. Just let them be absolutely free with the options that are there. Put in every niche tool that's there on the checkout. I think these are the easy ways to do it. Like focus on post-purchase, speaking to the consumer. And the second part is give them as many options as you can during purchase, right? I think these are easy to do. These are, again, tech solutions that are already available, plug-and-play solutions. I'm sure Cashfree is doing a wonderful job there. I think these two can be done today, right? You can do it like within an hour, set up things. The rest of it is always strategy and it goes on for a couple of months. But I think this is pretty fundamentally easy to do. Yeah.
Perfect. We have another question. Do you think luxury brands offering discounts will always go the other way, with customers feeling bad for being offered the discount? Or do you think they also need to have a discounting strategy for long-term growth, considering India has so many brands that offer discounts?
I have a very funny answer to this. And the difference between premium and luxury is that after you've bought premium, you feel good about yourself always. When you've bought luxury, you'll feel bad once, right? And then you'll probably seep out to that. I think luxury brands, luxury brands in India, not affordable luxury, not affordable premium, whatever the journeys are in between, but actual luxury brands in India do not give you discounting on the purchase of a single product, right? And that is the trend that is always there. They might reduce the price if you are buying multiple accessories together. And I think most brands today will offer you free service, free pickup, free consultation with a lot of people, but will not reduce the retail price of the product. I think inherently people, and it's human mindset that you put a price to everything that is there, right? So the best way to understand a consumer is ask them ki what is the best way to understand whether the brand is good or bad, and they'll say if it's a higher price, then I'm sure they're putting in more effort and things like that, right? So I feel the entire perceived branding goes for a toss, especially for luxury products. You will never see a Maserati giving you a discount even if you buy like 20 cars together. That's like again supreme luxury, but even if you go for a Gucci in India, as soon as you give a written discount, people feel that this is going to go out of the market, right? So I think bundling and then reducing prices or throwing in freebies is a way to kind of reduce the overall price that the consumer has to pay. But I feel that's the best way to do it. I don't think Sanjana, a lot of brands in India, especially in the luxury cadre, will go for discounting. A 2%, 3%, 5% is good, but I think bundling will still be the number one thing. Yeah.
And also, like, it's also about the stage at which you are at when you start a business. Like, when you position yourself as a luxury brand or a premium brand, one is like how you position it, and another is how people perceive it, right? So to reach and attain that state of being perceived as luxury or being perceived as premium, like to reach to that state, you might, like, the brands might use certain mechanisms to achieve that. But if once attained, I think offers discounting kind of becomes a secondary, because the target segment that you are kind of chasing thinks differently.
We have another question for you, Pravin. During transit, if the customer conveys that they don't need the product anymore, is there an easier way to argue?
Easier for whom, the customer or the brand, is the question, right? Like, so, but I think no, I would not say, because in fact during the transit it kind of becomes more complex, because you need to, like, so the entire shipping, right, and how the overall order journey looks like after your purchase, how you deal with the shipping provider, the warehouses, and how when the order is picked up, and that entire journey is like kind of sequential and complex, and there are multiple players that are involved and layers that are involved even for you to cater to that product. And in during the transit, if there is a cancellation, but how that cancellation as a message kind of gets reflected and percolated to the right owner to act upon it, kind of also becomes a challenge. So after, like, during the transit, it kind of, I would say that it becomes more complex. You might as well, like, kind of receive it and like kind of like push them away again, because it doesn't help, because the cost is there. Like, the once the order is placed, and the only thing which you will save eventually is someone might not have to come again to pick up. So that can still help, but it also brings in a lot of complexity to manage the entire life cycle of the order at that stage.
Got it. We have another question, which is, which payment modes have you seen picking up more in India, GPay and UPI or credit cards?
I think goes without saying, like, UPI. I think thank you have not put up COD there, but yes, I think UPI hands down kind of is winning it. The overall ecosystem is coming in there. In fact, I don't feel we are far away from the point when even the credit card payments would be made possible using UPI rail, which is already there. And it's just a matter of adoption, how the overall ecosystem adopts to it. And your credit will also come on UPI, your credit card will also come on UPI, and you name it, like even the net banking is kind of coming on UPI. So
Yeah.
it will be a UPI solution.
I think it's also India's baby, no? It's like cricket in payments for India. So I think it's one thing that very few countries in the world can beat India on, is UPI and the ease of payments via scanners or links and things, right? So I think UPI is here to stay. I think everything else will link to eventually UPI because it's easier for the government to track. It is the easiest way of payment. It has no limits. And I think UPI is going to stay. I think the easier it is for people to kind of enable UPI payments on any kind of platform that's there, introducing split into it, introducing buy now pay later through whatever UPI payment sources are there. I think that is going to be killer right now. I think everybody is burning their head and discussing in roundtables about how can we make UPI smoother, how can we show screens, how do we do BNPL, split everything through that. So I think if there is no COD in the options, I think it is going to be UPI. By the sheer volume of consumers that are coming to D2C every day, I think COD tops everything. Right? I think people have built brands in India by offering this as a solution. Right? So UPI, COD, and then credit. I think that is how it's going to go.
Yeah, if the question is for luxury brands, then probably credit cards will come up. So it's also a function of AOV, what you're selling. You do see change in patterns of the payment modes, but on like at a macro level, of course, UPI wins.
Well, that brings us to the end of the Q&A session. And this webinar, this has been an incredible discussion. A huge thank you to Anand and Pravin for sharing their expertise and to all of you for being such an engaged audience. If you'd like to continue the conversation, feel free to connect with our speakers on LinkedIn or explore the solutions offered by Marmeto and Cashfree Payments. Until next time, have a fantastic weekend and go out there, charm your customers, lock in that loyalty, and remember, this financial year, the focus isn't just on growing, it's on growing sustainably, meaningfully, and with your customers by your side. Cheers and see you soon.
Thanks, Pravin. See you guys. Thank you so much. Join in. Bye-bye.